They told me not to go back. 12 years had passed since the incident, yet that cursed patch of water off the East Atlantic still haunted my sleep. I had buried the memory as deep as the ocean trench surrounding Hollow Isle, but last month, on the dot of midnight, a letter arrived. No name, no return address. Just 5 words written in tight black ink. The light is still on. I burned the letter. I tried to forget it, but the dream came back that night. The lighthouse blinking through fog, the horn echoing endlessly, and a voice I hadn't heard since I was 15, whispering my name from the cliffs. I thought therapy had silenced that voice. I thought time had dissolved the hallucinations. But when I woke up drenched in sweat, clutching my phone, I saw the last photo I'd taken on that island all those years ago had returned to my camera roll. Except in this one, the lighthouse door was open and someone was standing in it. I booked a ferry the next morning. The captain didn't speak much. He just stared at me with weather-worn eyes as I handed him a crumpled $100 bill and muttered, "Hollow Isle." His fingers curled around the cash like driftwood. "Haven't had a passenger ask for that place in years," he grunted, voice thick with salt and suspicion. "Ain't nothing there but fog and rot." I gave a nervous laugh. "Just visiting. For closure." He didn't reply, just gunned the engine and turned the bow toward a horizon swallowed by cloud. The trip was supposed to take 2 hours. It took 5. Somewhere along the 3rd hour, the sun disappeared behind a wall of gray mist. Gulls stopped circling the boat. Even the water grew unnaturally still, like the ocean was holding its breath. Then the horn sounded, long, low, distant. It wasn't the ferry. It was coming from the island. "Still works," the captain muttered, tightening his grip on the wheel. "That old horn's been dead since the 90s. My heart thudded. We reached shore just past dusk. The dock was rotting and half swallowed by rising tides. I jumped across to land, backpack slung over one shoulder, boots crunching on wet pebbles. When I turned to thank the captain, he was already gone, boat engine churning the sea like he couldn't leave fast enough. Alone now, I took in the view. The island hadn't changed much. Blackened pines curved like old bones. The path leading up the hill was half eaten by moss, but the lighthouse, it was lit, bright, unblinking, blazing like a searchlight aimed into nothing. It was never supposed to be on, not after what happened to my brother.
The path up to the lighthouse had changed, or maybe my memory was playing tricks. I remembered it being steep, carved into the hillside with ragged steps and rusted rail. Now, the rail was gone, and the trees leaned closer. They weren't dead, not exactly, but their bark had blistered like old burns. Their leaves whispered, not in wind, but in patterns, syncopated bursts like breathing. I ignored it, chalked it up to nerves. I had my flashlight now, and the lighthouse ahead was still burning bright, as if someone had just fueled it. But no one was supposed to be here. No one had lived here since the summer my brother disappeared, since the search party failed, since the Coast Guard wrote it off as a misadventure and told us to move on. The front door of the lighthouse creaked as I pushed it open. It wasn't locked. That alone should have been a red flag. Inside, it smelled like old salt and burnt oil. The walls were streaked with moisture and something darker, like soot or mold. and on the table in the corner lay a logbook, a tattered, sea-warped leather ledger, the keeper's log. I shouldn't have touched it. I shouldn't have opened it, but my hands moved before I could second guess. The pages crackled, ink blurred in places, but the handwriting was familiar, deliberate, methodical, and definitely my brother's. April 3rd, 2012. Fog thick tonight. Beacon malfunctioning again. Can't shake the feeling something's watching from the trees. Heard footsteps on gravel. No one outside. Logged entry for records. April 4th, 2012. Power came back on without generator. No idea how. Horn sounded for the first time in years. Something responded. Didn't sound human. I flipped forward. The entries grew frantic. Scribbles, ink smears, some pages torn out entirely. Then, April 7th, I saw Mom, outside, in the fog, but Mom's been dead for 5 years. She called my name and smiled. I almost opened the door. April 8th. It's not her. It's wearing her face. The light is drawing it closer. I stopped breathing. That was the last entry. No sign-off, no goodbye. Just an inky fingerprint pressed beside the words, "wearing her face." Suddenly, the floor groaned above me. I wasn't alone. I spun around, flashlight shaking in my hand. The narrow spiral stairs loomed, leading to the lantern room at the top. Shadows danced along the steps. "Hello?" I called out. "Is someone there?" No reply. Just silence. Except not total silence. There was a low scratching sound, like fingernails on metal. I took one step up, then another. With every creak of the stairs, the scratching grew louder. Halfway up, I saw something move in the reflection of a cracked porthole window. A face, not mine, smiling. I bolted up the final steps, bursting into the lantern room, and found nothing. No one. The room was empty. The great lens of the beacon rotated slowly, casting its harsh white glare over the sea. On a bench near the window sat a tin cup, still steaming, fresh. Someone had been here moments ago. I looked down the stairs. They were gone. The spiral had vanished. Only a sheer black drop remained. Then, the horn sounded again, long, deafening, and for a moment, the beam of light swept the ocean and lit up 100 figures standing on the water, waiting, watching.
I stood there, alone at the top of the lighthouse, breathing in short, panicked bursts. The spiral staircase below me had simply vanished. No wood, no iron railing, just a void that dropped into endless black. I dared to shine my flashlight down the shaft, but the beam vanished into nothing. I wasn't imagining this. The keeper's log still sat in my bag, and I felt its weight like a warning. The room swayed. I pressed against the thick glass panes of the lantern room, gripping the cool metal frame. Outside, the fog boiled over the sea like something alive, and those things still stood out there, motionless in the water. Even from up here, I could make out the shapes. Human silhouettes, all facing the lighthouse. Their stillness was worse than any movement. Then, the light passed over them again, sweeping like a silent searcher, and they were gone. All of them, in one blink. I turned back into the room, and I noticed something horrifying. The light wasn't just rotating across the sea. It was casting shadows on the inside of the glass, too. Shadows that didn't match anything in the room. One of them moved against the grain. When the lens turned left, the shadow moved right. Something was in here with me. I backed into the corner, my flashlight clutched tight. "Show yourself!" I shouted, my voice cracked, small against the groan of the lantern's mechanics. Silence. Then, a slow click behind me. I turned and saw the hatch to the beacon's maintenance crawl space open. Just wide enough for a body, just dark enough that I couldn't see inside. And then, came the same fingernail-on-metal sound I'd heard on the stairs, except now it was right behind the hatch, and it was followed by something worse. A voice, but not in my ears, in my head. "You're not the first to come back. He wasn't the first to stay." I staggered back, my flashlight flickered. I tried to leave, to go down the stairs. They were there now, as if they'd never disappeared. I didn't question it. I ran, down the spiral, skipping steps, half tripping. My breath was so loud in my ears I didn't hear the other footsteps until they were right behind me. Not echoing mine, not in sync. Another pair of feet was running down with me. I burst out the front door into the cold night air, gasping. The path down the cliff was gone. The trees had moved again. They'd shifted closer to the lighthouse, thicker, taller, twisted. Where the trail used to be, now there was a wall of bark and bramble. I was trapped. Then the horn sounded again, but not from the tower this time. It came from the woods, from deep within the trees, long and low, vibrating the ground under my boots. And something answered it. A high, mournful howl, not animal, not wind, a call. I stumbled back against the lighthouse door, heart hammering. The shadows beneath the trees began to move, slow, crawling, many-legged. I turned and ran, not toward the trees, not into the tower, but around the edge of the cliff. There was one place I hadn't checked yet, the old oil shed. Half collapsed last I remembered, it sat behind the lighthouse, tucked against the cliff's curve. Maybe, just maybe, there was something in there I could use. A flare, a map, a weapon, anything. The door creaked open louder than it should have. Inside, the smell was overwhelming. Old fuel, wet rope, and rusted metal. And something sweet, rotting sweet, like decaying fruit left too long in the sun. I covered my nose and stepped inside. It was pitch dark, but the flashlight worked. Barely. The beam trembled over rows of cracked shelves, coils of mildew-covered rope, and oil drums that looked like they hadn't held liquid in decades. Then I saw it. In the corner, a mirror, full length, covered in a sheet of cloudy plastic. Why would a lighthouse keeper need a mirror out here? I approached it slowly. My reflection flickered strangely, like bad TV signal. Then, it moved. Before I did, I froze, and it smiled. I didn't. "Give him back!" I shouted at the mirror, irrational but desperate. The reflection stopped smiling. It stared. And then the reflection said, in my brother's voice, "He stayed to keep the light on. You'll stay to feed it." The glass shimmered, and something pushed against it from the other side. I turned and ran. Out into the open, back toward the tower, anywhere but here. But the fog had changed. Now it was thick as wool, and it breathed. I swear it inhaled when I stepped into it. And somewhere, far off but growing closer, I heard dozens of voices calling my name.
I ran without direction. No path, no horizon, just fog. It swallowed everything, the rocks, the moonlight, the echo of my footsteps. Even the sound of my breath felt muted, like something was compressing reality itself. The sea was gone. I should have heard the waves crashing nearby. Instead, I heard nothing. No birds, no wind, only the soft crunch of gravel beneath my boots. Even that sounded distant, like I was stepping inside a padded box. The trees were gone too. In their place, pale vertical shadows stretching impossibly tall, like abandoned power lines in a ghost city. And then they shifted, not swaying, turning, like they were watching. I stopped. Every instinct screamed to keep going, but something deeper, older, told me to stand still, to listen. There was a rhythm, buried under the silence, like a drumbeat under the earth. Thump, dump, thump, getting faster. It wasn't a heartbeat. It was footsteps, but not mine, and not human. They were wet, heavy, dragging something behind them. I crouched behind a jagged boulder, barely breathing. Through a rip in the fog, something lumbered past. Not walking, slithering on legs. It moved like it remembered how to be human but had forgotten what bones were. Long arms, a crooked neck, skin that sagged like wax left near fire. And dragging behind it was a keeper's coat. Torn, burned, still smoking at the edges. It stopped, raised its head, sniffed the air, and whispered, "The light not fed tonight." I pressed a hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. It turned its head, almost completely backwards, listening, but not with ears, with something else. Then it dropped to all fours and disappeared into the fog impossibly fast. I waited, counted in my head. 30 seconds. A minute. 5. And then I arose and ran in the opposite direction, limbs shaking, lungs on fire. Everything was wrong here. Even the gravity felt different, like something was pulling me, not down, but inward, toward the lighthouse. No matter how far I ran, the light kept sweeping across the fog, right to left, right to left, right to left, like it was scanning for me. And sometimes, just as it passed overhead, the fog screamed. It started low, like steam escaping a cracked pipe. Then it rose into a wail, hundreds of voices layered together, stretched and distorted like a choir underwater. I dropped to my knees, hands over my ears. And then it stopped. Silence again. But now, the fog wasn't fog anymore. It had faces, barely visible. Mouths open, eyes hollow, some pressed up against the air like it was glass. I blinked. Gone. But the dread stayed with me. I staggered forward, aimless, until I reached something solid. A cabin. Old, faded, half covered in vines that shouldn't grow on this coast. It looked familiar. Not just lighthouse keeper familiar. Childhood familiar. My grandfather's old cabin. The one we sold 20 years ago. But this wasn't on the island. Was it? I stepped onto the porch. The door was already open. Inside, a fire flickered in the hearth. Warm, welcoming, too warm. There was no wood, no gas, just flame dancing over nothing. And sitting beside it, in an old rocking chair, was a woman. She turned slowly, her face half in shadow, half too smooth, like her features hadn't fully formed. But her voice was unmistakable. "You should have stayed away, Jonah." I froze. "Mom?" She nodded once, not in kindness, more like confirmation. "You followed his call, just like your father." I stepped closer, my voice cracked. "Why? Why is this happening?" She didn't answer. Instead, she lifted something from her lap. The keeper's log. It was open to a page I hadn't read yet. Burned at the edges, ink bleeding. I took it, and I read. Entry 47. "The fog is hungry tonight." I saw Elric's face in the mirror again. He's been dead 30 years, but he smiled like I just saw him yesterday. I think the lighthouse is remembering for me. I don't need to anymore. When the light spins fast, they come back to feed. If I don't feed them, they take pieces. I've lost fingers, memories, nights, years. The light must never go out. Not again. Never again. I looked up. The woman was gone. So was the cabin. I was holding the book, standing in a clearing, and something was circling me. Shadows at the edge of the fog. They knew I had the book now. They wanted it back. I started running again, toward the only thing left. The lighthouse. Its glow pierced through the unnatural fog, drawing me in like a moth toward an electric scream. I burst through the front door, bolted it behind me. Inside was worse than I remembered. The walls were moving. The wallpaper, peels of it from another decade, writhed like muscle. And from the top of the stairs I heard my brother's voice. "Jonah, help me, please. I don't want to stay here." I turned to the staircase. This time it was pulsing, breathing, lit from above by a golden glow, the beacon itself, spinning faster now. I climbed, one step at a time. Each one warped beneath my feet, squishing like carpet soaked in blood. At the top, the lantern room. But it wasn't empty. Standing in the center, bathed in the blinding, rotating light, was my brother. Only not. His face was stretched, his smile too wide, and where his eyes should be, twin beams of light that pierced the walls. He opened his arms. "Stay with me. It's so much easier." Behind him, something moved in the fog. Dozens of shapes pressed up against the glass, watching, waiting. Some of them were people I recognized. Old keepers, missing fishermen, even one of my childhood friends who drowned when we were 10. All of them had the same glow in their eyes, and all of them smiled. I backed up towards the stairs. "Ben, we need to go. We can still get out." But he shook his head gently, like I was a child who didn't understand. "You don't get it, Jonah. You were never supposed to leave the island. The lighthouse remembers us, and now it's your turn to remember it." Then he opened his mouth, and the fog poured out.
The fog poured out of my brother's mouth like a screen turned inside out. I ran, back down the stairs, barely seeing, lungs filling with something heavier than air. Memories. Each inhale brought flashes, my brother's laughter, our last summer here, Dad shouting from the shore. It wasn't just fog, it was everything we'd forgotten. I stumbled into the lighthouse's lower chamber. The light spun overhead, faster now, a pulse, a signal. The journal shook in my hands. One more entry had appeared, written in fresh ink. "If the light dims, the dead forget themselves. But if it dies, we remember for them. We burn in their place." Something knocked at the door. Then again. Then it was inside. The door hadn't opened, but something, many somethings, were crawling down the walls, upside down. Whispers filled the air. "Feed the light, feed the light, feed the..." I opened the furnace hatch below the beacon. A black void, not fire, just absence. The journal burned blue when I dropped it in. The creatures screamed, and the fog ripped itself apart. When the fog cleared, the lighthouse stood on a bare island of ash. No trees, no trails, no boat, just me and the sound of the beacon humming like a heartbeat. I climbed one last time. Ben was there again, not twisted this time, just tired. He tried to leave too, he said. It always calls us back. I stepped into the lantern room. All around us, the glass showed visions, not the sea, but lives, people I'd forgotten, regrets I buried. Then I understood. The light didn't just warn ships, it remembered the dead, kept their stories alive, but only if someone fed it. Ben smiled faintly. "You can go now. Someone else is coming." I didn't ask who. I just walked outside, down the now solid path, until the fog parted one last time, and behind me, the lighthouse turned. It watched me leave. I never saw the island again. Not in maps, not in coastal records, not in satellite images. But the light never left me. Some nights, I'll wake to a slow spinning glow on my bedroom walls. A low hum, a name whispered. Mine, always mine. Sometimes I answer, sometimes I don't. But I always remember what my brother said before the fog took him, before he became something else. The dead don't fear being forgotten. They fear remembering too much. Now when I hear the waves crashing, even if I'm hundreds of miles from the sea, I know the lighthouse is near. It moves now. It finds people. People like you. So if you ever wake to a foghorn in the distance, to salt in the air, to a voice calling your name, don't follow it. Don't answer unless you're ready to carry the light forever.